The alien ship broke through the clouds like a silver tear in the sky. People on the ground stopped what they were doing and stared upward, their hearts pounding. For years, humanity had waited for this day, the day the alien delegation would arrive on Earth. Governments had prepared ceremonies, soldiers had trained for order, and diplomats had written long speeches. The alien girl, the daughter of a powerful leader, was chosen to step on Earth soil first. She had grown up hearing stories about humans, that they were unpredictable, emotional, and reckless. Her teachers warned her to expect strange behavior, yet she was told this meeting would be ceremonial. She imagined humans would bow, salute, or maybe offer a ritual gift. In her culture, greetings were sacred, full of rules, and a single mistake could bring insult. As the ramp of the ship opened, she walked down with her guards at her side, her head high, her robes glowing under. The sun, thousands of eyes watched her, cameras flashed, and soldiers stood stiff in their lines. The air felt heavy, like the whole planet was holding its breath. And then, it happened. A human pilot stepped forward, breaking from the formal line of officials. He wasn't wearing ceremonial robes only, his flight suit marked with patches of missions and dust from old battles. His boots thudded against the pavement as he walked straight toward her, ignoring the gasps around him. Her guards stiffened, their hands on their weapons. The girl narrowed her eyes, expecting some kind of bow or a polite gesture, but instead the human did something no one in the galaxy had dared. He opened his arms and pulled her into a hug. The crowd gasped, some shouted, and cameras zoomed in as the alien girl froze in his arms. Her heart raced, her body stiff, her mind unable to process what was happening. Among her people, touch like this was not casual. It was private. It was intimate. It was sacred. Her guards shouted in their language, ready to strike, but she raised her hand to stop them. She was stunned, shocked, and yet curious. The warmth of the human's body pressed against hers, and for the first time in her life she felt something she had never felt before. The human smiled as he released her, his voice calm and simple. "Welcome to Earth." His words carried no ceremony, no protocol, just warmth. The alien girl blinked, her mind racing. This was not how things were done. This was not what she was taught. Her heart kept pounding as her eyes locked on the human pilot. The officials nearby whispered in panic, some furious, some confused. The alien counselors hissed, demanding punishment, while Earth leaders exchanged nervous glances, but the girl could not speak. She could not shout. She could not demand his arrest. Instead, she stood silent, replaying the hug in her mind. Why did it not feel like an insult? Why did it feel like safety? She shook her head, trying to hide the redness creeping on her cheeks. Her people would see it as weakness. Her father would see it as betrayal. And yet, something deep inside whispered that this moment mattered. The human, unaware of the storm his act had caused, simply stood tall and confident. He looked at her like she was not an alien princess, not a leader's daughter, but just another being worthy of kindness. The silence around them grew heavy, the cameras catching every detail. Reporters whispered into their devices. Leaders argued in low tones, but for the girl, the world had narrowed to that single human gesture. Her guards leaned closer, whispering if they should act. She shook her head again, her voice low but firm. No. The human's eyes flickered with surprise at her response. He tilted his head almost as if he understood, almost as if he knew what his hug had done. She felt a chill run through her as she realized this small moment might change everything. Ceremonies could be forgotten, speeches could be ignored, but that hug would be remembered across worlds. For the first time since her arrival, she did not feel like a princess bound by duty. She felt like a girl caught in something greater. Her heart whispered a warning, or maybe a promise. This was not just the arrival. This was the beginning of something the galaxy would never forget. The alien girl could still feel the warmth of the human's arms long after he had stepped back. She stood frozen on the landing platform, her people staring, the human crowd whispering, and the cameras capturing every second. Her guards kept shifting uneasily, their hands twitching near their weapons, unsure if they had just witnessed an insult, an accident, or something far more dangerous. For her kind, physical touch was a language stronger than words. Hugs were not casual. They were not playful. They were sacred signs of belonging. And yet, this human, this stranger, in a worn flight suit had broken all the walls with a single embrace. The alien girl's thoughts swirled like a storm. Part of her wanted to shout, to demand punishment, to remind everyone that her status could not be mocked. But another part, a quieter and more dangerous part, whispered that the human's action had not been cruel. It had not been arrogant. It had been warm. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The human leaders looked pale, realizing what had happened. They rushed forward with official greetings, bows, and speeches, trying to bury the moment under protocol. But it was too late. The galaxy had already seen. The alien counselors glared at her, their eyes sharp, silently demanding her judgment. Was this human guilty of disrespect, or was he forgiven? The girl glanced at the human again and found him watching her calmly, his eyes steady, no fear in them, only sincerity. Her heart skipped a beat. She had been trained to face assassins, rivals, and hostile negotiations, but she had never been trained for a hug. The crowd beyond the fences buzzed louder, human voices mixing with alien whispers. Some humans were laughing, saying the pilot was brave. Others were terrified, thinking he had doomed Earth's alliance. Some aliens were outraged, muttering that humanity was barbaric. Others were curious, wondering if this strange human gesture held a secret meaning. The alien girl finally moved, her voice clear and steady. "I will continue the ceremony." Her words silenced her guards, but her tone was sharper than a blade. She had not yet forgiven. She had not yet condemned. She had chosen to wait. The officials breathed with relief, quickly moving into the planned rituals. But the tension remained thick as she walked down the path with soldiers on both sides. She could still feel the echo of the hug on her skin. Why did her chest feel lighter? Why did her heart refuse to calm down? Her mind replayed the scene again and again, the way he had stepped forward with no fear, the way he had wrapped her like she mattered, not as a princess, not as an alien leader's daughter, but as someone worthy of comfort. She clenched her hands inside her robes, trying to regain control. Her father, watching through distant screens, would be furious if she appeared weak. The galaxy was already watching every twitch of her face, every flicker of her expression. And she was failing because she could not erase the strange warmth blooming inside her. Later, in the meeting hall, she sat across from Earth's leaders, their voices trembling as they tried to impress her with speeches of unity and respect, but her eyes kept drifting to the human pilot standing in the corner, silent, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. Why was he here? Why had he been allowed to remain after such an offense? Unless the humans themselves did not see it as offense? Her lips pressed tight. She realized this was not a mistake. This was a difference of worlds. To him, it was normal. To her, it was shocking. She leaned back, hiding her turmoil, but inside she felt a dangerous pull. What if his way was not wrong? What if her way was not the only way? The thought itself was treason. Her guards whispered, asking if she wanted him punished later. Her throat tightened. She wanted to say yes to prove her loyalty to her people, but the word refused to leave her tongue. Instead, she whispered, "Not yet." The guards looked confused, but obeyed. The human pilot finally turned his head, and their eyes met across the room. For a moment, it felt like the hall was empty. Like the speeches, the guards, the cameras, all had vanished. There was only the two of them, bound by a gesture neither side could understand. She blinked, breaking the connection, her chest rising, fast, her mind screaming that this was dangerous. The hug was supposed to be forgotten, buried in protocol, punished and erased. But deep inside she knew this was only the beginning, because if one hug could shake the galaxy, what would happen if she let herself feel another? The question burned inside her as she forced her face into calmness, hiding the storm behind her eyes. This was no longer just an arrival. This was the spark of something no one could stop. By the next morning, the galaxy was already buzzing with stories. Every channel, every newsfeed, every broadcast replayed the same moment again and again. The human pilot stepping forward, breaking protocol, wrapping the alien girl in his arms, the hug that should never have happened. Some reporters called it the bravest act in human history. Others called it the greatest mistake since first contact. On alien worlds far from Earth, leaders gathered in secret halls, whispering of insult, whispering of weakness, whispering of war. In human cities, children laughed and mimicked the hug, while politicians argued if it was shame or pride. But inside, the alien girl's ship, the whispers cut sharper. Her counselors sat in their chambers, their voices low but filled with venom. "He mocked our traditions," one said, his long fingers curling in disgust. "He should be punished," another hissed. "Let them know we are not so easily touched." But a younger counselor leaned forward, his eyes narrow. Or perhaps he knew what he was doing. The others turned to him, confused. The younger one explained, "Perhaps the human wanted to send a message. Perhaps this hug was a challenge, a way to show that Earth does not bow to us." The room fell silent, because deep inside they feared it might be true. Meanwhile, in the corridors of the human embassy, rumors ran wild too. Soldiers whispered that the pilot would be court-martialed. Some joked he would be promoted instead. Others whispered of secret orders, wondering if maybe the hug was planned by Earth's leaders to break alien formality. But none of those rumors reached the pilot himself. He sat quietly in a small room, staring at the floor, his mind calm. He knew what he had done, but he did not regret it. To him, a hug was simple, a way to say, "Welcome," a way to say, "You are safe." He did not understand why the galaxy had erupted, in chaos, but the alien girl understood. She sat alone in her chamber aboard her ship, replaying the moment over and over, her hands clenched against her robes, her chest tight. Her people's voices echoed in her ears, telling her it was wrong, telling her it was an insult, telling her she should demand his punishment, but her heart betrayed her. It whispered another truth, that when he hugged her, she had not felt insult. She had felt warmth. She had felt seen, not as a princess, not as a tool of diplomacy, but as herself. And that frightened her more than any weapon. Outside her chamber, her guards whispered too. They muttered that the human had bewitched her, that she had grown soft, that she no longer carried the fire of her bloodline. She could feel their eyes on her, watching for weakness. She pressed her hand to her heart, trying to steady the storm inside. At a banquet later that night, the whispers grew louder. Alien nobles avoided her gaze. Some smirked, some frowned. Human officials tried to laugh nervously, pretending nothing strange had happened. But the truth was in the air. Everyone felt it. Everyone knew the hug had changed something. Every time the alien girl walked into a room, voices hushed, glances darted, questions lingered. She sat at the table pretending to listen, but her mind drifted. Her eyes found him again, the pilot, standing at the edge of the hall, quiet and steady, as if nothing in the universe could shake him. Her fingers curled against the tablecloth, her heart racing. Did he even know what he had done? Did he understand that one gesture had shaken the balance of two civilizations? Her counselors leaned close to her, whispering into her ear, "Demand his apology, demand his punishment, show them you are strong." But she only nodded vaguely, her eyes still locked on the human. Rumors, she realized, were like fire. They spread fast. They consumed faster. And now, she was at the center of that fire. The galaxy whispered of her weakness, whispered of human arrogance, whispered of forbidden closeness. And deep inside, she feared the whispers might be right, because when she closed her eyes, she could still feel the warmth of that hug. And she knew, no matter what rumors said, no matter what politics demanded, she could not forget it. The hug had planted a seed that no whisper could erase. The council meeting was long, filled with sharp voices and heavy silence. The alien girl sat at the head of the table, her face calm but her heart restless. Her counselors demanded justice, demanded punishment, demanded the human be made an example. To them, a hug was not just strange, it was dangerous. It was a breach of sacred tradition. But the girl raised her hand, her voice steady. "I will decide after hearing him." Gasps filled the chamber. Her people leaned forward, shocked. Why would she want to hear the human? Why would she waste her time on one who had already insulted her people? Yet she had already decided. She needed to know. She needed to understand. Later that evening, in a quiet room lit by dim lights, she faced the human pilot alone. Her guards waited outside, their hands on their weapons, distrust written in their eyes. The human stood tall, his flight suit still plain, his eyes calm. There was no fear in him, no shame, only honesty. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Do you know what you did?" He tilted his head slightly. "I welcomed you." Her eyes narrowed. "You broke tradition. You touched me as if we were bonded, as if I belonged to you." The human shook his head gently. "On Earth, a hug is not possession, it is kindness." Her breath caught, her mind trying to grasp his words. Kindness, such a simple word, such a simple idea, and yet so heavy in your world, he continued. People bow, salute, kneel, but those things create distance. He stepped forward slowly, careful not to alarm her, his voice calm. "Oh, hug closes that distance. It says you are safe. It says you are welcome." The alien girl's chest tightened, her heart beating faster. She wanted to dismiss his words, to call them childish, to call them weak, but she could not, because deep inside she remembered how it had felt, safe and warm. She crossed her arms, hiding her unease. "Among my people, touch is sacred, given only to family or bondmates." The human nodded. "Then maybe I broke a rule I did not know, but I will not say I regret it." Her eyes widened. No one spoke to her like this. No one looked at her without fear. She leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Do you realize your hug may cause war?" His answer was simple. "Then your people fear too much." She blinked, her heart skipping again. His words like fire, reckless and dangerous, but also honest, he went on. "I did not hug you to insult. I hugged you because you looked alone when you stepped onto our world." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Had he seen it? Had he seen through her mask? All her life she had walked with guards, with counselors, with leaders, but always alone. And this human, in one glance, had seen the truth. She turned her head away, her voice lower. "You are bold, human, too bold." He smiled faintly. "That is our way." Her heart trembled. She wanted to laugh, to shout, to silence him, but she could do none of those because his words had slipped past her defenses. The silence stretched between them, heavy, alive. Finally she spoke. "My people will not understand." The human's voice softened. "Then maybe one day they will." She stared at him, stunned by his calmness, stunned by his courage. He did not bow. He did not beg. He simply stood, steady like a mountain. And for the first time, she wondered if humanity's strength was not in weapons or ships, but in their hearts. When the meeting ended, she walked past, her guards, her face unreadable, but inside her thoughts burned. The human's way was reckless, yet it was powerful, because with a single hug he had shown her something her world had forgotten. Connection. That night, as she lay in her chamber, the whispers of the galaxy haunted her. Some said she was weak. Some said she was curious. Some said she was already tainted by human touch. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the echo of his words. On Earth, a hug is kindness. Her eyes closed, but sleep would not come, because she knew tomorrow her decision would matter. Would she follow the cold path of her people, or dare to walk the strange, warm path of the human's way? The alien girl sat in the Grand Council chamber, her hands resting tightly on the cold armrests. Around her, voices clashed like blades, counselors shouting, guards whispering, human officials watching with nervous eyes. Everyone wanted an answer. Would she condemn the human pilot for breaking tradition, or would she let his actions go unpunished? The air was so heavy it felt like the whole galaxy was waiting for her breath. Her father's emissary leaned close, his voice sharp and low. "Daughter of the line, you must demand justice. The human insulted you. The Empire demands strength." On the other side, Earth's diplomats bowed, their voices softer. "We beg for patience, Princess. The pilot meant no harm. His gesture was one of peace." Her heart pounded as both sides looked to her, waiting for her word, waiting for her choice, but deep inside her mind whispered with the memory of that embrace. She remembered how warm it had been, how safe she had felt, even for a moment. It had not been a threat, it had not been an insult, it had been something else, something she could not admit aloud. Still, she knew the danger. If she defended the human, her people would call her weak. If she condemned him, she would betray the truth inside her heart. The chamber erupted again, counselors demanding her decision. Her throat tightened, her voice stuck, and then she rose slowly. The sound of her chair scraping across the stone floor silenced everyone. She lifted her chin, her eyes calm though her heart thundered. "The human will not be punished," she declared, her voice steady, each word cutting through the noise. Gasps filled the room. Some shouted in outrage, some whispered in disbelief. Her counselors pounded the table. "This is weakness, this is betrayal, you dishonor your bloodline." But she raised her hand, silencing them, her gaze sharp as steel. "You call it dishonor," she said. "I call it understanding." Her words stunned the room. The humans stared wide-eyed, the aliens hissed. The emissary's face darkened. "You would risk our standing for a human." She met his gaze without flinching. "I would risk everything for truth." Her guards shifted uneasily, torn between duty to their traditions and loyalty to their princess. The human pilot stood in the corner, silent, but his eyes locked on hers, steady, unwavering. For a moment, their gazes held, and she felt strength flow into her, strength she did not know she carried. The chamber was chaos, voices rising, threats echoing, but inside she felt calm, because her choice was made. After the meeting, she walked alone through the long corridors of the station, her robes brushing the polished floor. Her heart was heavy, but also lighter than before. Her people might despise her decision, but for once she had spoken with her own voice, not with the voice of tradition, not with the voice of fear. And it terrified her how much that voice sounded like hope. Behind her, whispers followed like shadows. "She is weak," some muttered. "She has fallen for the human." Others whispered. She clenched her fists but did not look back. At the docking bay, she found the human waiting. He stood alone, no guards, no counselors, just him. "You defended me," he said quietly, almost surprised. She looked at him, her voice firm. "I defended what was true." He tilted his head. "And what is that truth?" Her lips trembled before she spoke. "That your hug was not an insult." His eyes softened, but he did not smile. Instead, he simply nodded. "Then you've made your choice," he said, his voice calm. "And so have I." She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough for her to feel his presence. "I choose to stand with you no matter what comes." Her chest tightened, her breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even those sworn to protect her. For the first time, she felt the weight of what her choice truly meant. This was no longer about ceremony, no longer about a broken tradition. This was about the path ahead, a path that could either unite or shatter their worlds. And deep inside, a dangerous thought took root. Perhaps she did not want to walk that path alone that night as she lay in her chamber. The stars outside her window seemed brighter, sharper, closer. She whispered to herself, "I have chosen." But, she knew, the real test was only beginning because her choice had not ended the whispers, it had only made them louder. And soon, whispers would turn into storms. The alien girl woke to the sound of voices outside her chamber. Her guards argued in hushed tones, their words sharp, their fear clear. They did not trust her decision. They did not trust the human. Already, messages had come from her father's empire, demanding answers, demanding punishment, demanding obedience, but she had made her choice and she would not turn back. She stepped out, her presence silencing the guards, her eyes calm but her spirit unshaken. "Prepare the council," she ordered, "and summon the human." The guards exchanged uneasy glances but obeyed. Later in the great hall, the tension was heavy again. Her people whispered like snakes, their voices slithering. "She is weak. She is lost. She is tainted. The humans stood together, nervous but proud, hoping, praying she would not bend. When the human pilot entered, silence fell. Every eye turned to him, some with fury, some with curiosity. He walked with steady steps, unafraid, as if the storm around him did not exist. The alien girl rose from her seat, her voice carrying across the chamber. "This human is under my protection." Gasps erupted. Counselors slammed their fists on the table, shouting protests, but she raised her hand, and even their anger bent to her command. "You see weakness," she said, her eyes burning, "but I see strength. For only the brave can give without fear, and only the strong can embrace without hate." Her words struck the chamber like lightning. The human pilot's gaze stayed locked on her, his eyes steady, and for the first time, she felt no shame in meeting them. Together, they stood as if bound by an unseen thread, and though the counselors grumbled, though the whispers spread, something shifted. Her people could no longer deny the truth. She had chosen, and the human was not broken. That night, in a quieter place far from the council's eyes, the girl and the human finally spoke without walls between them. They sat near the observation window, the stars stretching endless beyond the glass. For a long moment, neither spoke, silence more comfortable than words. Finally, she said softly, "Do you understand what you have done?" He glanced at her, his expression calm. "I broke your rules." She shook her head, her voice low. "No, you broke my chains." Her words surprised even herself, and she looked away quickly, hiding the tremor in her voice. The human leaned forward slightly, his tone gentle. "Then maybe it was worth it." Her chest tightened, her heart beating too fast. For years she had been bound by duty, by law, by ceremony. Now, because of one reckless human, she had tasted freedom, and it terrified her. The girl pressed her hand against the glass, staring at the endless stars. "My people will not forgive this. They will not forgive me." The human's voice was steady. "Then let them hate me instead." She turned sharply to him, her eyes wide. "Why would you carry my burden?" He met her gaze, his tone firm. "Because you should not carry it alone." Her lips parted, her heart trembling. For the first time, someone had offered not to use her, not to bow to her, not to fear her, but to share her weight. A bond began to grow, unseen but strong. Not one of ceremony, not one of politics, but one of truth. In the days that followed, they walked together, spoke together, learned each other's ways. She listened as he explained human customs, laughter, songs, and hugs. He listened as she explained alien traditions, bonds, and silence. They clashed, they argued, but each time, the bond grew stronger. Her guards muttered louder, the counselors glared sharper, the whispers spread faster, but the girl no longer cared, because when she stood beside him, she felt something she had never felt before, not just safety, not just warmth, but choice. And choice was a gift greater than power. One evening, as they walked through the gardens of the station, alien plants, glowing under soft lights, she paused. The human looked at her curiously. "What is it?" She hesitated, her cheeks warm, her heart loud, then slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched his hand. It was brief, only a second, but the meaning was clear. Gasps came from the shadows where her guards watched, but she did not let go. Not this time. The human's eyes widened, but then he smiled faintly. Not with arrogance, not with triumph, but with quiet understanding. A new bond had been made, not forced, not demanded, but chosen. And though the galaxy whispered of scandal and weakness, the girl knew the truth. This was not weakness. This was strength. Because strength was not in walls or rules, but in trust, in courage, and in the choice to stand together. And as the stars burned bright above them, she realized this bond was only the beginning. The galaxy had not been silent since the moment of the hug. Every news station replayed the image, every council debated it, every leader gave warnings, and now, as the alien girl stood once more in the grand chamber, she knew the eyes of countless. Worlds were upon her. Her father's emissary had arrived, tall and severe. his words sharp as a blade. "You have brought shame to our empire," he thundered. "You have broken our sacred ways. You will denounce the human before all or face exile." The chamber roared with whispers, some in agreement, some in shock. The human pilot stood at the edge, his face calm, his eyes locked on hers, waiting. Her chest tightened, her heart pounded. This was the moment. This was the edge between past and future. She closed her eyes for a breath, then lifted her chin, her voice clear. "No." The word echoed through the chamber like thunder. "I will not denounce him," she declared, her voice rising. "I will not call kindness an insult. I will not call courage a crime." The emissary's face turned dark with rage, his hands trembling. "You dare defy the Empire?" She stepped forward, her robes flowing, her gaze unshaken. "I dare, because I have seen the truth." The humans in the hall held their breath. The aliens hissed in outrage, but the girl did not waver, her voice growing stronger. "In his world they embrace not to claim, but to welcome," she said. "In his world, they do not fear closeness, they honor it." Her people muttered, their anger hot, but their eyes uncertain because deep inside they too had seen it, they too had felt it. The emissary shouted, "You betray your bloodline, you betray your people." But she shook her head, her words steady. "I do not betray them, I free them." And then, before the entire chamber, before the cameras of 1,000 worlds, she turned to the human pilot. Her steps echoed as she crossed the floor, every eye following, every breath held. She stopped in front of him, her heart pounding like a drum. And then, slowly, deliberately, she wrapped her arms around him. Gasps filled the chamber, cries of outrage, shouts of disbelief. But she did not let go, her voice steady as she spoke for all to hear. "This is not weakness. This is strength. This is trust. This is the future." The human pilot's arms tightened around her, not in arrogance, not in victory, but in quiet solidarity. And in that moment, the galaxy saw something no one had ever imagined. An alien princess and a human pilot, breaking tradition with a gesture older than words. The emissary shouted for guards, but none moved, their eyes wide, their hands frozen. Because they too felt the weight of history in the air. For generations, fear had built walls, but now a single hug had torn one down. The whispers of weakness would grow louder, but so would the whispers of hope. The girl pulled back at last, her eyes fierce, her voice strong. "If my choice is exile, then I accept it. If my choice is war, then I face it. But know this, the future will not be built on fear. It will be built on courage, and on bonds like this." Silence stretched across the chamber, heavy and unbreakable. The human stood taller, the alien stared in disbelief. The emissary trembled with fury but found no words. The girl turned to the crowd, her voice like fire. "You call me weak, but I tell you this, it is far easier to hide behind walls than to reach out with open arms." Her words rang out, carried across networks, across ships, across worlds. Children watched with wide eyes, elders shook their heads, leaders clenched their fists, but the seed had been planted. The galaxy had seen something unthinkable, and it could not be unseen. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, she stood beside the human, the stars burning bright beyond the glass. "Do you realize what we have done?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. The human nodded, his tone steady. "We've changed the story." Her lips curved faintly, not a smile of victory, but of relief, of hope. "Then let it be known," she whispered, "that the future began with a hug." The human glanced at her, his eyes calm, his words simple. "And with your choice to keep it." She closed her eyes, letting the truth settle inside her. The road ahead would be dangerous, filled with storms and battles, filled with doubt and betrayal. But for the first time she did not fear it because she would not walk it alone. And somewhere across the galaxy, whispers had already begun to change. Not whispers of insult, not whispers of weakness, but whispers of possibility. An unthinkable future had arrived, and it had begun with them.